So we're going to start with the class. Okay. So for today, you were supposed to bring or to show some advancements related to the theoretical framework, right? But during tutorials, we're going to check those theoretical, that part of the theoretical framework, right? So tomorrow, I'm going to check with every one of you those advancements, and that's it, okay?
Okay.
And today, we're going to be focused, as I told you, something related to the literature review, because we have covered all the issues related to the theoretical framework, okay? Okay, cool. So talking about the literature review, sorry, we're going to see right here some aspects related to how to write the literature review of the research paper. I think you have read information from Christensen and Borg Johnson in the Creswell related to the literature review. Yes?
Yes, but just
Are you
Creswell.
But you have questions. Yes, we all have questions, and my duty is to solve those questions today. Okay, so let's start with this. Okay, so what are you going to take into account? Okay, what are we going to take into account for the literature review? Okay, first of all, what is the meaning for literature review? What do you know about that?
Literature review is
It justifies.
One by one, please.
It is a summary of our of all about about what we are reading
Okay, yes.
about
What else?
about the topic of our research. I do that.
Okay. Okay. Sounds good. Yes, it's going to be just related to the research. Once again, Juan Carlos.
It's a support taking into account previous studies in order to improve our research or
Very good. Yes.
Teacher,
So yes.
Repeat, please.
Other function of the literature review is that describes, summarize, evaluate, and clarify the previous research.
Very good. Alex?
But I also read that this is for quantitative study, that it justifies the importance of the research problem.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
Very good. That's it. So those are going to be just the aspects that we need to take into account for the creation of this background, of the creation of this section, right? As we see right here, so the literature review is one of the pillars on which your research idea stands, since it provides context, relevance, background to the research problem you're exploring. Example, one of the recommendations given to me in the previous years when I was taking my master degree seminars was something like, we're going to divide the literature review into 3 sections, and I'm going to write them down, right? So those 3 sections are going to be the following ones. Number 1, we're going to take into account the local studies, right? Number 2, we're going to take into account also local studies and I forgot. Yeah, the national studies. And also, the third thing to be taken into account is going to be the international studies. Okay, so by taking...
What happens if...
Yes?
What happens if we don't find any kind of local studies?
Not to worry. So we're going to continue with the national studies, right? So the local
Okay.
studies are going to tell us, for example, let's say some issues that have been discovered at, I don't know, maybe Universidad Industrial del Santander, right? Or maybe, yeah, that's the closest one. But maybe we, or something here at the Universidad de Pamplona, right? So let's say we have found that information. If not, we're going to see what is going to be at a national way. So we can use, for example, information from Universidad del Norte, Universidad de Popayán, Universidad de Cartagena, Universidad Nacional. We could work too, right? For us to see what is happening at a kind of heterogeneous or homogeneous context, right? Why? Because we're Colombians, maybe because we're going to have students from different locations, but from Colombia, and how this is going to show us the way in which we're going to be developed, the way in which we're going to develop this research, or the way they have developed the research, right? So that is going to be just the national studies. And the international studies, we have to take into account some other variables. Number one, for example, those studies that are related, for example, for Latin America, right? Latin America, and the other ones related to the rest of the world, right? So, for example, let's say we're going to work with some students from, with some studies which were conducted in Venezuela, Ecuador, maybe Argentina, right? Mexico, Panama, right? In which we're going to have the idea on what is happening at that context. By taking into account that we're Latin Americans, maybe the context at a social-cultural context or at a social linguistic context can deal or it can fit into our requirements, right? But what happens if we're going to see, for example, some studies from China, I don't know, Ireland, Norway, Sweden, Russia could be, but well, I don't think Russia because they write everything in Russian. So in this way, what we have to take into account is going to be the impact that these studies have created all over the research development, right? Or all of those variables that can be seen there, right? And all of those variables that can provide us information or relevant information for our for the way we can improve our ideas in the project. Got it? So that is going to be just some of the ideas related to this issue. Let's see the two types of literature review right here. So we're going to see, for example, there are some ways in which we're going to organize this. Here, this can be categorized as experimental and theoretical, right? Now, the experimental are going to be just those ideas that can work inside the literature review. But how? Okay, so for example, as we're experimenting some ideas on human beings, so we're going to see the conclusions, the results, the methodology, and the way in which the objectives were mixed with all of this in order to provide some elements useful for understanding a problem, right? So it could be like this, as we see right here, right? So experimental literature review basically refers to surveying all the information available on a particular topic and critically analyzing the gaps that need to be worked upon, right? So we're going to see that if this is going to be just an experiment, right? The more extensive the review, the more precise and systematic research project will be. Therefore, you need to read a lot, right? Okay. And the theoretical part is going to be just for that issue related to the theoretical background. because you're going to see, for example, some studies that they're going to be mostly based on theory, or that is going to provide you some elements for you to describe your variables, those variables that you have stated inside the theoretical framework, right? Meaning your theories. Okay, so let's see right here, the theoretical literature review essentially involves two steps. Number one, surveying and critically reading the existing literature. So in this case, so we're going to say what? Well, what I already exposed. So if those no, that you're going to read a lot in order to determine if this works for the theoretical part or not, and then summarizing all, actually penning down the gist of your reviewing in an organized manner. So this is known as the theoretical review. Therefore, for us to say if the theory inside those studies are going to be useful for us or not, right? Okay, so that's the way in which we're going to take into account the literature review. Okay, but there's going to be a way in which we're going to work with the literature review. So how? We're going to use, for example, standalone literature reviews. In the literature review section, as I told you, something like I don't know if that was about last class or maybe some of the class, I told you that there are going to be two ways in which we're going to state the literature review. The first one is going to be just related to reviewing the literature, the studies, as narratives, right? So you're going to write an introduction, the body paragraph, the body issue, right? And then conclusions about those issues. Therefore, you can use it like a form of summary or a form as a critique, right? Sorry. So in that way, you're going to work, or you're going to show the importance of each one of the literature reviews, right? Of the studies. Let's suppose you have 10 studies. So you're going to review you're going to review study by study. The other one is going to use a systematic reviews. So what is that? So you're going to use, for example, a group of studies, right? And you're going to create a category. When creating the category, so what you're going to do is going to be just the introduction, right? So you're going to start talking about those, all of those studies, and then you're going to talk about some little issues related to the methods, the results, the discussions. But in the end, what you're going to do is to try to provide, or try to create an interaction and a discussion, as it says right here, right? A discussion about all of those studies, right? So as I showed you last time in my paper, in my project, okay? So this is going to be one idea related to the literature review. What is this? Okay, 20 pages. Okay, let's see this part. No, this one is shorter. So now let's see this part related to writing the literature reviews. So now, once again, what is this? So the literature review is going to be a critical exploration of the existing, sorry, my pronunciation, research that is relevant to your dissertation topic, or in this case, your research topic, okay? Then, here, what is going to be the purpose? Now, the purpose for this is, number one, to provide background information about a research topic. Let's say your research topic is anxiety, it's going to be just oral proficiency, is oral communication, is, I don't know, autonomous work, is gender impact, right? So therefore you're going to state the importance of a topic. How? By showing that this yes,
but for that we don't we have the theoretical framework?
Yes, I'm going there because there are going to be some some elements that are going to look alike, but in the end they are different, right? Yes, they're going to be taken as a theoretical issue, but the theoretical issue right here in the theoretical part, framework, sorry, is going to be just related to how the theory is going to explain a topic, right? But with the literature review, we're going to say the way in which these studies have been developed or have been developing all over this time, and the way in which or the results they got sorry, got it? So that's going to be the difference right here. Theoretical framework for us to say that how the theory explains the problem, but the literature review is going to explain how these studies have been have provided some ideas on how to solve a problem inside a context, a specific context, right? And it is going to be just focused on that. So theory explains the problem, but the literature review is going to explain the real world, the context, right? Because inside
Context
the
I mean,
context
I
in
thought
which
that,
it was developed.
yeah, but I guess that it must be more like for explaining it's worthy for the research, right?
Yes, of
I mean
course.
the value of the previous of the other
Yes, of
studies
course.
to our research,
That's it.
right?
Yes, of course. Yes, you're right. And also, you're going, as you're saying, it's going to just show the way, the validity, the way in which um, this is going to be just worthy for our study, right? So here, number three, to demonstrate familiarity with a topic or problem. So it is not going to be just strictly the directive like the theoretical framework. No, it's going to have a relationship, right? And here, for example, to set the stage for further work and allow you to join a scholarly conversation inside the document or outside the document. So when I'm talking about outside the document, for example, presentations, seminars, whatever. Okay. So here, what to take into account for you to create the literature review. Number one, you need to be very organized, right? Related to the way in which you're going to explain all these studies, right? So therefore, you're going to create a summary about it from the introduction to the conclusion, right? And here you're going to see this part that is going to be just identify areas of controversy inside the literature. So those issues that catch your attention, and that is going to tell you how important, as Ricardo said, is for your study, right? Or for your project. And then formulate questions that need further research. Well, that is going to be just later on, right? And maybe here, sorry, there are going to be some studies in which you're going to see that there are some questions, right? So these questions, how can I say this? These questions can give you an idea on if you can continue that project, that study, sorry, or maybe it can give you some ideas for you to start developing, right? Okay. So here, when writing this issue related to the literature review, you have to take into account that every time you're going to write, you're going to describe a study or a category in which we have a set of studies, we need to take into account number one, the general topic, right? So what is going to be just the way in which this studies one by one are going to be described, right? Or the way in which the category is going to be described. So you have right here to take into account the following issues. So what are you going to identify? You're going to identify trends in what has been published about the topic, right? Number two, conflicts in theory, methodology, evidence, and conclusions, or the relationship about that. Gaps in research and scholarship, right? A single problem or new perspective or immediate interest. And this part right here is the one that you're going to take into account for you to establish. So number one, the writer's reason for reviewing the literature. So your point of view. The criteria to be used in analyzing and comparing literature and organization of the review. So have a sequence between the first study and the second study if you're going to do it in that way. Or if you're going to do it in a group, so show the sequence and the link that these studies have. And finally, when necessary, state why certain literature is or is not included. So every time you're going to add something inside the literature review, you need to tell the importance of this study inside your proposal, right? Then you're going to write the body, right? So in which we're going to talk about the topical themes, if it is going to be qualitative or quantitative, the conclusions of the author, specific purpose or objectives that you have seen over there, and if there's going to be a chronology, right? So that's it. I have said that you need to summarize all of these issues, right? And that's all. Now, in order to write the conclusion, if you're going to summarize, sorry, if you're going to conclude one by one the paper, right? So you need to point out your point of view related to your point of view, redundant. You need to point out the major issues or facts inside this study. Let us say that we're going to talk about number one, major methodological flaws or gaps, in the research, inconsistencies in theory and findings, and areas of issue pertinent to the future study, right? So those are going to be just the most relevant issues when taking into account the when developing, the literature review, right? And here you're going to find some ideas on what to follow. This part is very important. So what is going to be one of the main points related to the literature review? So you need to take into account the state of research. So if people or researchers are still investigating about this topic, or this topic is no longer being studied. Now, the other thing that you need to take into account, the second point, is that you're going to include just the most important issues for your study. So please do not add everything. No, just the things that are going to be just related to your study, right? So let's say you're talking about, in my case, that I used a study from Menzies, 2015, if I'm not wrong, or 13, in which she was talking about the use of a model in order to improve the writing production. But my idea was to talk about how to use that model in order to improve the oral production, right? So, was there a kind of relevant factor for me to take into account, or for me to absorb, for me to recycle, and to put it inside my paper? Yes, of course. Which one? The way in which a model was going to be used in order to teach something, right? So I was putting there those issues. I wasn't saying something like, What was the first idea that Menses had, or what was the order established by Menses in order to collect all the written productions? No, what I was just using right here was just a methodological issue that she implemented for her to provide students some relevant aspects for them to develop. Sorry. One ability related to communication, and that was all. That was all the issue that was using, right? And here you need to balance summary and analysis as you write. So please do not be that analytic and do not summarize everything right here. We're going to have only 10 minutes for this. Okay, then keep in mind your purpose of writing, right? So which are going to be the benefits of those studies, right? And if these studies contribute to your proposal. And that's all, right? So that's the issue related to the literature review. Let's see right here some important aspects related to the literature review again. Okay. As you see right here, so even more summarized. So the literature review is going to be just a list of books and journal articles on specific topics grouped by theme and evaluated with regard to your research, right? So that is why I'm telling you to create categories, because as you see right here, grouped by theme, so by a category, you're going to have a further and a greater interaction with the authors, and they're going to provide you even more valuable items to be included and for you to validate your study, right? So let's see right here. Anyone who can help me reading this part, please? Who can help me reading this part, please?
Yeah. The literature review identifies connections, contradiction, and gaps in the literature. The connection let you get a feel for the agreed academic opinion on the topic. The contradictions showcase the disagreements on the topic. The gaps give you an opportunity to develop and express your own opinions. The gaps also identify the areas that need further research.
Okay. So those are going to be just the general aspects that we have been talking about during this hour, right? And let's continue
But
right here.
I
Yes?
guess that the previous slide was more like related to the, not to the narrative way of writing, but with the more like the critical way. Because I mean, you're comparing theories and you are looking for, I mean, you are comparing also the good things and the bad things. So you are like analyzing the gaps, the contradictions, and the connections with your what? With your, probably with your topic, or yeah, the relevant things. And but you're criticizing something. I mean, you're not like just,
well, when talking about criticizing in research, it is going to be just to try to scratch, right? Try to scratch out inside, try to scratch inside the document for you to see what is useful for you. That is going to be just criticizing, right? It's not going to be like, okay, it has some failures. No, you're not going to tell the failures over there. But they're going to tell something like, this is useful. This study is useful for me because of this, and this element, right? You're not going to take into account, or I'm not going to take into account these and these elements because sorry, they do not make part of my research topic, right? So that is going to be just the criticizing part, right? The critique.
Yeah. So you can say something like, regardless the this and this point, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. That's it.
Okay.
So that's it. Very good. You're getting the idea, right? So, for example, here we said the literature review, therefore, also is an account of what has been published in relation to your research objective. What has been published in the recent years, right? Because if we say that we're going to analyze a research that was conducted 30 years ago, let's take into account that technologically talking, and generally, and the factor of generations have changed a lot, right? So that is going to be useless. Number two, the review is organized around your research questions and sub-questions. And yes, of course, about the objectives, right? So that is why, based on your research questions and your research objectives, you're going to create your categories, right? For you to see connections, maybe contradictions, and maybe gaps. What's going to be that thing related to gaps? So, for example, let's say that you haven't found enough information for you to answer this little part of your research, right? At a theoretical way. So you can include that part there, right? Now, let's see right here. 6 steps for you to write the literature review. Number 1, you're going to choose the topic, choose the category. Number 2, collect relevant material. Read it, right here. Read and skim the articles. Group articles by theme, as I already told you, right? Use citation database. So all the citations that are inside the document can give you a lot of clues, right? On what? On if you need to, yes?
I mean, in that part, isn't like, for example, the paper was written by, I don't know, let's say Chomsky, and
Yep.
so we say something like, Chomsky 2011 on his paper wrote and then something like that. But I mean, the theory has their own authors, and we have already reviewed in the theoretical
Yes,
framework.
but we're using we're using the theory inside a real context, and not all of the time the the theory is going to act the same in a different context, right? So that is why we're going to use, for example, what Chomsky stated, and let's say, I don't know, I'm going to
What he found,
invent.
for example, what he
Yeah,
found,
and
and the
let's
method.
say, yeah, perfect. And let's say, for example, that Brown created something else, and now he's saying that no, that idea is not working anymore here. And let's say that, I don't know, I'm going to use another author. Let's say Aparici in 2010 says that no, that's not the way for us to teach English. This is going to be the way in which, in this specific context, worked. So that is going to be the way to like the chronological issue, right? That is why we have here finding agreement and disagreement, right? So we're going to see, that is why that I'm telling you to look for updated material. If we use the updated material, therefore, we're going to have some ideas on how, at a chronological order, these ideas have been evolving to be included inside a real context, right? Well, a real context, no, a nowadays context, or a nowadays context at that time for that paper. Got it? Guys, 1 minute for this to finish. So I'm going to stop sharing right here. And I'm going to create a new link, right? So go to WhatsApp,
okay.
and I'm going to give you the link. I'll be back in, I don't know, 1 minute.